This was one that nobody else has.
Clint Eastwood, the legendary film icon and director of Million Dollar Baby and Gran Torino, has finally broken his silence, revealing stories he'd never shared before about Robert Redford, his friend, collaborator, and at one point, quiet rival. In a recent Variety interview, Clint pulled back the curtain on old Hollywood tension, secret competition, and long-whispered rumors that never fully faded. What stunned people most wasn't just the stories, it was the timing. Eastwood hinted at truths tied to Redford's later years, leaving the public buzzing with questions about why these wounds are being opened now, after decades of silence. The tone was heavy, personal, and clearly unfinished. "There are couples who only need to stand next to each other to make the world believe," Clint said quietly, speaking about Robert Redford and Barbra Streisand. His voice dropped, his stare distant, like he was replaying something sacred he never forgot. "When The Way We Were hit theaters in 1973, Hollywood froze. Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, sold out instantly. Critics said audiences weren't just watching a film, they were watching two hearts collide in real time, and the emotion felt dangerously real. At that moment, Redford was untouchable. Fresh off Butch Cassidy, the golden face of American cinema, Streisand was already a cultural force, her voice everywhere, her presence impossible to ignore. Put them together and it stopped feeling like fiction. It felt lived in. Behind the scenes, the contrast was wild. Redford stayed quiet, disciplined, clockwork precise. Streisand was bright, expressive, humming through makeup calls. That tension made the air tight, stretched thin, ready to snap at any moment. During one apartment embrace scene, the set went completely silent. Director Sidney Pollack later admitted no one dared to yell, "Cut," when Streisand rested her head on Redford's shoulder. The moment felt too real to interrupt, but sweetness came with clashes. Redford pushed back hard on dialogue he felt weakened his character. At one point, he stopped filming, walked the set, and told Pollack, "That man is already broken." The scene was reshot without words, and it broke audiences worldwide. Off camera, Redford stayed distant. No lunches, no hangouts, straight in and out. Rumors swirled after reports his wife appeared unexpectedly on set, leaving Streisand visibly shaken. Never confirmed, but Hollywood believed it anyway. When filming ended, the silence hit hard. A crew member claimed Streisand sat in her dressing room, refusing to change, saying, "I'm afraid I'll never see Robert like this again." That line haunted people. At the premiere, Redford sat rows away. When the lights came up, he walked over, whispered, "Thank you for believing in us," then disappeared without looking back. Years later, Streisand revealed that Redford once called her late at night, said, "I love you, and I always will," then hung up. No explanation, no follow-up, just silence. Eastwood later added softly, "Some things don't need words. You see it in their eyes." That feeling stayed with them forever, untouched, unfinished. But after that film, Redford's life shifted. Clint hinted that his next chapter was different, one that sparked rumors Hollywood never stopped chasing. "Robert was the kind of man who made even men look twice," Clint said calmly, calling it both a gift and a curse. By the late 60s, Redford had become the face of American masculinity. Golden hair, blue eyes, quiet confidence. And with that came whispers, speculation, and stories that refused to die. In 1965, when Inside Daisy Clover premiered, those rumors only grew louder, and Hollywood watched closely, waiting for cracks that never fully showed. Redford's screen presence was different, and Hollywood noticed fast. He didn't fit the tough, loud male mold of that era at all. Variety praised him for introducing a new masculinity, quiet, gentle, but magnetic. And that one line lit the match. What sounded like respect quickly turned into non-stop speculation. A week later, Hollywood Citizen News dropped a bold headline suggesting his role felt too real to be acting. The article hinted that Redford wasn't just playing a character, he was the character. From that moment on, tabloids chased him like a puzzle they needed to solve. The National Enquirer claimed unnamed sources said Redford lived a carefully guarded private life, and gossip snowballed fast. In 1966, Hollywood Tonight quoted an anonymous stylist saying, "Robert chooses cologne by season and folds his pocket square like he's aligning the universe." It was meant as admiration, but it poured gasoline on the fire. By summer 1968, the whispers got louder. At an American Film Institute fundraiser in Beverly Hills, Redford appeared alongside director Michael Cimino and writer Larry Kramer. A single photo, Redford, smiling, hand on Kramer's shoulder, hit the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner front page with the headline, "Robert Redford and His Mysterious Friends." The article pointed out he hadn't been publicly seen with a woman since his marriage, and phones exploded the next morning. His agency panicked. Warner Brothers rushed out a statement saying it was just a charity event, but nobody cared. Then another name hit the headlines: Tab Hunter. In 1970, Confidential Weekly published a story titled "Redford and Hunter: The Secret Behind Paramount's Closed Doors." It alleged a private relationship during studio filming, offered no proof, yet split Hollywood in half. Some called it cheap gossip, others swore there had to be truth buried somewhere. As always, Redford said nothing, and that silence only made the stories grow louder. When asked about that era, Clint Eastwood gave a faint smile. "Hollywood was digging for anything," he said. "Robert stayed quiet, never reacted, and that made people invent more." He added, "Silence can be more dangerous than confession." Through the 70s, the rumors never stopped. Every photo with another man, director, writer, photographer, turned into another headline. Once, The Merv Griffin Show even aired an anonymous guest claiming insider knowledge, offering nothing but vague hints. The pressure pushed Redford inward. He stopped doing personal interviews, left Los Angeles, moved to Utah, built a ranch, and founded the Sundance Film Festival. Vanity Fair later wrote, "He didn't flee fame. He escaped questions that had nothing to do with art." Then the storm returned. A report claimed authorities had quietly monitored Redford due to alleged activist associations. No charges, no proof, but the rumors reignited instantly. Eastwood summed it up bluntly in Variety. "In Hollywood, the cleaner you are, the harder they try to smear you." He added, "Robert never lived to please anyone, and that's why he stayed decent." Redford kept working, directing, building legacy projects that earned real respect. But behind the scenes, something darker was brewing. In March 1978, while promoting The Electric Horseman, NBC Los Angeles broke a shocking report. Investigative journalist Tommy Wallace announced leaked LAPD documents listing celebrities quietly monitored during the 1970s, and one name stunned Hollywood. The very next morning, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner splashed a bold red headline across its front page. "Is the LAPD spying on Robert Redford?" Local TV ran the segment non-stop, from Beverly Hills to Sunset Boulevard, from coffee shops to film sets. One question echoed everywhere: why was Hollywood's calmest, most respected man listed in a surveillance file? A week later, Radar Online dropped what it called the Redford Files. Dozens of pages summarized his private routines, travel patterns, close friendships, and leisure habits. One section even suggested his name appeared under a secret social monitoring initiative launched after late 1960s California protests. Unverified, but explosive. Investigative reporter Tommy Wallace later claimed the documents showed Redford was flagged for hosting private gatherings in Sundance, Utah, near a small film center he'd built. Authorities allegedly questioned whether those meetings had political intent. No proof, just suspicion. And that was enough to light the fuse. Networks jumped in fast. CBS Evening Report asked if Redford was leading an ideological influence circle inside Hollywood. The Washington Post hinted, carefully, that he might be linked to off-the-record funding for anti-war film projects. The story peaked when producer Alan Pierce, who'd worked with Redford on Downhill Racer, held a Beverly Hills press conference and said he'd testify if asked by police. That crossed the line. Within days, Redford's legal team filed suit in Los Angeles Superior Court against NBC and Pierce, citing invasion of privacy and fabricated claims that damaged his name. The filing went national instantly. Reporters flooded the courthouse. NBC stood by its sources but refused to show evidence. The court demanded original LAPD documents, but the department turned in heavily redacted pages, citing internal security. At a June 1978 hearing, Redford appeared worn but steady. He spoke just one sentence to the cameras: "I am a filmmaker, not an intelligence target. I want Hollywood remembered for art, not suspicion." That line hit every major paper. A week later, the case was dismissed for lack of direct proof. Still, NBC was ordered to issue an on-air apology, admitting some details weren't verified. The damage, though, was already done. Endorsements vanished. A Warner Brothers project was quietly paused. Investors backed off. One critic wrote, "Redford isn't just being watched, he's being left behind." Vanity Fair journalist Marjorie Rosen later described visiting his Provo Canyon home and finding only his housekeeper. "He's been in the wood shop all week," she was told, "drinking coffee, reading papers, not saying a word." Then Clint Eastwood looked straight into the camera and spoke slowly. "I know, Robert, he had nothing to hide. In this town, if you're too honest, they treat it like weakness." The studio went silent. Then applause broke out. From that moment, public opinion began to shift from doubt to sympathy. But the classified file had already changed everything, and its consequences reached far beyond reputation. The scandal didn't just hit Hollywood. It cracked Robert Redford's nearly 30-year marriage right down the middle. Friends later recalled his wife, Lola Van Wagenen, saying bluntly, "You're fighting the whole world, but you forgot the person beside you is fighting too." That line cut deep and never left him. After the fallout, Redford pulled back even more. He shrank his circle, walked away from Beverly Hills for good, and settled in Utah, pouring everything into building the Sundance Film Festival. It wasn't escape, it was a statement. This was Robert saying, "I'll tell my story my way," Clint Eastwood said during the interview. He added that Redford never brought up the incident again, except once, quietly saying, "Some things you have to let die on their own, or they'll kill you first." That silence said everything. The classified file story eventually faded, but Redford was changed forever. He stepped out of the spotlight and moved behind the camera, choosing control over chaos, vision over noise. But just when he thought the storms were done, another hit, this one inside his own home. Long before fame, Redford wasn't a symbol. He was a broke college student in Colorado, working bar shifts to survive. In 1957, he met Lola, a history major from Brigham Young University, and everything slowed down. He once told a friend that her smile made him want to stop moving entirely. A year later, on September 12, 1958, they married in Provo, Utah. No cameras, no glam, just a few friends and quiet promises. Asked why so young, Redford said, "I wanted a place to come home to when the lights go out." As his career exploded through Barefoot in the Park and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Lola stayed grounded, raising their children away from the spotlight. They had 4, and early heartbreak struck when their first child passed away as an infant. A loss Redford never spoke about publicly, but it followed him silently. Friends noticed how gentle he became around children afterward, careful, almost guarded. People assumed the tragedy would bind the marriage tighter, but distance grew instead. Redford disappeared into film sets, press tours, and galas. Lola chose Utah, calm and privacy. In a letter later revealed, she wrote, "Robert says he loves me, but I think he's in love with the whole world." That line echoed. By the mid-1970s, Hollywood sensed the fracture. The Los Angeles Times noted Redford rarely mentioned his wife anymore, despite once calling her the light behind the curtain. After the 1978 scandal, his retreat to Sundance only widened the gap. In a 1983 interview, Lola admitted, "It feels like I'm watching him walk away without being able to call him back." The words shook Hollywood. In 1985, after nearly 3 decades, they divorced quietly. No battles, no drama, just distance made official. Redford later said, "Sometimes the kindest way to love someone is to let them go free." Afterward, he lived alone in a wooden cabin in Provo Canyon. Friends said he'd sit on the porch at night, wine in hand, staring at the Wasatch Mountains. He never talked about the past, and when family came up, he'd smile faintly and change the subject. Redford's children all carved their own paths far from Hollywood noise. Shauna, the eldest, became a painter and art lecturer in Salt Lake City, choosing canvas over cameras. David James, once a documentary filmmaker, later passed away in 2020 after a long illness, a loss Redford carried quietly. Amy, the youngest, followed closest to her father's road, becoming an independent director. Her film The Guitar premiered at Sundance in 2008. As for his former wife, Lola, she rebuilt herself too. She earned a PhD in history and founded Clio Visualizing History, producing educational films that reached far beyond Hollywood. Still, the industry refused to fully let Redford go. In the mid-1990s, Vanity Fair stirred talk about a special relationship with Brazilian actress Sônia Braga after an unreleased project. A year later, the New York Daily News linked him to Swedish actress Lena Olin, his co-star in Havana. Both women denied it outright. Redford stayed calm, telling CBS Sunday Morning, "I don't live to explain my private life. What's precious? I keep silent so it doesn't get distorted." Silence wasn't avoidance, it was armor. That silence finally broke in 2009. At 72, Redford stunned everyone when he appeared at the Cannes Film Festival holding hands with Sybil Sagers, a German painter nearly 20 years younger. No hiding, no excuses, just confidence. 1 month later, in July 2009, they married quietly in Hamburg, inside a small church by the Elbe River. No glitter, no celebrity parade, just a few close friends, including Clint Eastwood. Asked how he felt seeing his old friend remarry, Eastwood smiled and said softly, "Robert spent half his life learning how to let go of loneliness. With her, he doesn't have to play a part anymore." That line landed hard. Since then, their life has been peaceful on the Sundance Ranch, painting together, planting trees, raising horses, hosting small student screenings. Redford wasn't Hollywood's leading man anymore. He became something rarer, a storyteller of silence, time, and gratitude. Eastwood later said, "Robert is a man of few words, but every choice he makes is a statement. Leaving Hollywood wasn't escape, it was survival." From a broke college kid in Colorado to a quiet legend in Utah, Redford completed the arc. But during those calm years, another twist appeared. One of the greatest roles of his life came within reach, only to slip away into Eastwood's hands. In 1993, Hollywood went wild over a novel that sold over 4 million copies in months, The Bridges of Madison County. Warner Brothers dropped $2.5 million for the rights and held a closed-door meeting in Burbank. According to Variety, one name made the entire room nod instantly: Robert Redford. Fresh off directing A River Runs Through It, critics said Redford told stories through light itself. Executives believed only he could play Robert Kincaid, the lonely photographer drifting across Iowa's covered bridges. Redford devoured the script in 3 days. He sent handwritten notes to the screenwriter, tweaking dialogue, reshaping scenes, even suggesting lighting for the Twilight Bridge moment. He wanted to direct and star, just like he had with Ordinary People. Everything seemed lined up until fate and Clint Eastwood stepped into the frame. Everything looked locked in until one comment changed the room. During a closed-door meeting at Warner Lot 16 on November 22, 1993, producer Kathleen Kennedy reportedly said something that froze the air. "Robert Redford is too perfect, too polished, too radiant." The concern was brutal but clear. Audiences wouldn't believe he was lonely. A leaked internal memo later doubled down, saying Redford felt like sunlight over a meadow, while Robert Kincaid needed to feel like wind over an empty field, beautiful but lost. That subtle shift flipped the entire project upside down. Executives panicked. Marketing teams warned that if Redford starred, viewers would expect a happy ending. And The Bridges of Madison County didn't offer one. Just days later, a new name appeared in the meeting notes: Clint Eastwood. At 63, Eastwood carried exactly what Warner wanted: weathered, solitary, real. According to the Los Angeles Times, he read the script in one night. At 7 a.m. sharp, he called the studio and said, "This is a beautiful story. If you'll allow it, I'd like to tell it myself." 1 week later, the deal was done, and Robert Redford was out. Hollywood exploded. Entertainment Weekly ran the headline, "Redford dropped for being too perfect." Some fans were furious, calling it betrayal. Others felt Eastwood's grounded presence fit better. The industry had never seen a legend lose a role for being too flawless. The irony was wild. When the news broke, Redford was in Utah preparing Sundance. Asked by CBS how he felt, he smiled calmly and said, "Some roles aren't meant to be kept. I think Clint will tell it better than I could." Classy on the surface, but friends later admitted he was crushed. He believed Robert Kincaid was the role of his lifetime, the one that would finally expose his vulnerability. After being removed, Redford vanished for months, canceling interviews, dodging questions, letting silence speak. Eastwood later addressed it straight to camera. "Hollywood chose me," he said, "but Robert opened the door first. He saw the beauty before any of us." He paused, then added, "He lost a role, but no one can take his essence." When The Bridges of Madison County premiered in 1995, it earned over $180 million worldwide and scored multiple Golden Globe nominations. Eastwood was praised everywhere, but Redford's name followed the film like a ghost. Redford answered Hollywood his own way. In 1994, he directed Quiz Show, exposing truth and deception in American media. No speeches, just cinema. Eastwood later revealed something few knew. Redford had battled illness his entire life, born frail, struggling with chronic pneumonia, enduring painful treatments as a child. In his 20s, overwork triggered severe ulcers. Friends said he survived on milk for weeks, but never complained. Even as arthritis and heart issues crept in, he kept working. He hated hospitals, drove himself to appointments, and returned the same day. In 2018, he underwent heart surgery, later developing COPD, but still appeared at Sundance in 2020 just to thank young filmmakers. Robert wasn't afraid of dying, Eastwood said quietly. He was afraid of not working. Doctors later confirmed his passing was due to heart failure tied to pulmonary complications. For those who knew him, it wasn't just a death, it was the end of an era. Eastwood said softly, he carried more pain than anyone knew, but never let it touch his art. There was never rivalry between them, only respect. In Carmel by the Sea at 95, Eastwood reflected quietly, coffee in hand. Robert wasn't just an actor, he kept decency alive in this town. When news broke that Redford passed at 89 in Sundance, Utah, tributes flooded the world. From Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid to All Is Lost, every clip replayed like history breathing again. Asked for reaction, Eastwood paused and said, "I didn't speak that morning, I just looked at the ocean. He wasn't my rival, he was the standard." Hollywood honored him in 3 tributes: acting, directing, and Sundance, the festival that turned Utah into the home of independent film. From The Sting to All the President's Men, every role carried truth over flash. Redford once said upon winning his Oscar, "I just want to tell stories about people, not stars." That sentence became his legacy. He helped launch voices like Quentin Tarantino, Steven Soderbergh, Darren Aronofsky, and Christopher Nolan. Outside film, he backed environmental causes, funded scholarships, and believed in giving back. When asked why, Redford smiled and said, "Someone once helped me go further. Now it's my turn." Eastwood recalled their last meeting in 2019. Redford joked, "We're getting old, Clint, but at least we're still speaking through film." Eastwood held his hand. Maybe that was goodbye. "We built an era together," Eastwood said. "He just went ahead of me a little." Robert Redford's story ends without a final scene, because the light he left still shines. And as Clint Eastwood looks back, he offers one final truth. Robert's greatest legacy was kindness. If you love uncovering the real stories behind Hollywood's glittering lights, make sure to like this video, subscribe to RumorFame, share it, and drop a comment below. Which moment from Robert Redford's life hit you the hardest? Turn on notifications and we'll see you on the next one.